And here we are with another shortwave show. We are live once again. Let's just see if everything is all right here. Looks like it. Looks like it pretty much. And here goes. Here goes another show. So hey everyone, welcome aboard. And as we set up the last little thing, here we go. Pretty cool. So hey everybody, welcome aboard. Nice to have all of you on board as usual. And here we are. This is the Shortwave radio show, and this is the Friday edition at 2000 hours Universal Time, where we tune around the bands, take a look at signals, see what's going to happen. And today we're just going to share some tips. Somebody told me that one of the things he wanted to see is, you know, how me, you, people that have been listening for a while, and even, you know, for people that have not been really there for a long time, you know, some tips and how you tune your band, the bands on the radio, how you use your radio, the way you know, seek out signals and try to find out what is really, you know, the best time to listen to, and you know, I'll share some of my tips, the way that I tune around, and of course we'll answer questions and have a lot of fun. Hey everybody, welcome aboard. So my name is Gilles. I'm located in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, and this is the Shortwave Show. We are here every Fridays, 2000 hours Universal Time, and we talk about radio. This is the idea, and hope everybody's gonna have a lot of fun. We're back at the good old SDR right now, and of course we'll be checking out some little signals. Just want to readjust something here because it's a little off, and here we go. So hey everyone, welcome aboard, and of course hope you enjoyed today's show as usual. So I'm gonna say hello to, by the way, there's some nice people in the chat room that you can actually interact with, ask questions to me through the chat room, and I think it's going to be pretty nice to you know, have all of you today talk about radio, and it's nice to see everyone there. So Jean Paradis, nice to have you here. Les Norton, hello there, says used to work at Montreal General in the 70s. Wow, cool. Sheldon Harvey from Greenfield Park, Quebec, a master behind one of the masters behind the Canadian International DX Club. We have, so Les Norton is in the UK, G4JNW. PLF Radio from France, nice to have you here. David Arden, nice to have you on board. Bram P from Pointe Claire, nice to have you here. Daniel Walsh, hello there, happy Friday everybody, and Daniel. Jeffrey Hunt, he can stick around, but no, don't worry, it's okay, you know. And it's always nice. It's cool to see. He says, I'm entering the broadcast engineering trade, and your show is a big inspiration. Thanks. Well, pretty cool. If we can, if I can in some way inspire anyone in either being in the hobby or doing maybe a work related to the hobby, to radio or electronics, or you know, the fun world that we actually are and have, it's cool. I'm Mapper from Moscow. Nice to have you on board. Anthony DeLorio, hello there. KC9KUH. Bobby Burgess with his new shortwave call, WA5107SWL. Congratulations on that, Bobby. Richard Cook, nice to have you here, receiving S11 number station on 4016 with very strong signal. Cool. Syrian Wello, hello there, nice to have you here. Ross Bennett, hello there. KI5SR, just gonna make things a little bigger for my old eyes that need a little help. So I'm just going to add this little thing here. I'd like to see how many people are watching. It's always a kind of a cool number to have. So, okay. What else do we have here? AA5HL, hey there, nice to have you here. And no one versus Greece is back on the air. I haven't heard in the past few weeks, every time I try 9420 was not on. I could hear 9935, but I could not hear 9420 for Greece in the past few weeks. So it's kind of interesting. So what else do we have? How far is Greenfield Park from Montreal? It's not very far. It's south of Montreal. It's pretty close to Montreal, actually. I don't know in kilometers exactly, but it's quite close. You can actually go there easily with the public transit system, taking the bus. It's not really far from Montreal. Bram's also starting in electrical engineering. This is cool. This is cool. Joshua Gosnell, nice to have you here, and nice to have you on board. So yeah, just east, southeast near Saint Sebastian. It's very, very close to the island of Montreal, actually. 9420 here, strong playing music. So Richard is confirming that he's here in Greece right now. So cool, and thanks for that. And AA5 HL says 9420 is back on the air, so cool. Because in the last few weeks I had, they were missing at some point. C. Johnson, nice to have you here. And it's cool to have you on board. And as for the drink today, it's I have a special treat. A friend of mine makes apple cider. And this is unfiltered apple cider that he actually has gave me a bottle. So I am drinking his apple cider today, which is very good. And this is the kind of thing that you got to be careful, because I'll tell you one thing: you drink this, it's almost like apple juice, but after a few of those, you kind of get a little drunk. So cheers, everybody, for it's delicious unfiltered apple cider. So, oh wow, 22-ounce cup beer mug. Wow, that's cool. So that's pretty good. That's pretty good, and really, really nice to have everybody here. And of course, we are live from Montreal Canada. We'll tunes, the bands also today. We'll have fun in checking out the signals a little bit. It's always fun to tune around. King Index has gone down. This week was a little pretty much unsettled conditions. There was some geomagnetic storming going on because the sun had a coronal hole. So the solar wind was actually faster than usual, and it triggered quite a few strong geomagnetic storms. Apparently some auroras even visible to the northern states. So kind of interesting. But it's calming down as the coronal hole is moving. It's calming down, and it's actually getting better. So well, that's a nice gift, Joshua. So anyways, nice to see everybody here. Richard's receiving BPM time signal on 5000. And we're gonna, let's check out what we have on the bands here. We're gonna go around a little bit. I was trying to get some of the time signal frequencies earlier. Not really being able to tune much. So, and my noise level seems to go higher than normal. Usually when I'm here, it ain't that high. I'm just gonna check something, guys, because I have the impression that there's a possibility that maybe my ground isn't grounded correctly. Let me just check that. Just curious here. Seems to be okay. So, I don't know. Seems I have a higher noise level today than I usually do, but also I noticed that the neighbors downstairs are there, and almost every time the neighbors downstairs are here, I have the impression I've got more noise than usual. So maybe they have computers or something that's turned on. So of course we'll be tuning around, checking out the different frequencies and signals, see what we can hear. Here's a BBC, not very strong, but the BBC World Service on 12095 right now, so we'll be checking that out. So it's really nice. TLF Radio sharing the SolarFlex 91, which is pretty cool, and it's really interesting that, you know, we got a few sunspots that is keeping the solar flux a little high, and pretty cool. Yeah, I know, Richard. I need a Wellbrook at some point, but I've been talking a lot with a lot of people on the Wellbrook side, and a lot of people seem to tell me also not to be too not to think that it's a miracle antenna either. If I have a lot of noise, the loop will get it also. So it all depends on if I can find also a good spot to put the Wellbrook. So yeah, there was actually a nice article, absolutely. Joshua Gosnell saying that is anybody been able to pick up North Korea on shortwave, or South Korea? Now KBS isn't, in North America, KBS is very difficult. In Europe it actually has a good signal, but here in North America it's a 15575 is horrible. It's totally horrible. And basically I've been listening through my phone. I got the KBS World Radio app, and I'm listening through the phone when I listen to them right now, because I just can't get them on shortwave. And as for North Korea, I've heard a few people in the West Coast that seem to have a good catch in the morning, early mornings, like around 1100 UT, something like that. I haven't heard North Korea in a while here, so not a lot. But yes, I have seen that article, like Steve Johnson is saying, that they are heavily, really heavily, North Korea is heavily jamming the broadcast of the BBC in Korean. So, you know, and I would guess that it's probably the case, because, I mean, they probably don't want to have all that crap, you know, that for what they think is crap in going into North Korea. And, you know, it's all of these countries, you know, it's like Cuba, any country that just doesn't want any broadcast to go through. The means of, you know, China, look at China, the amount of jamming that they use against a lot of international broadcasters. So it's pretty crazy, you know, to think about it. So Daniel Walsh says, sounds like my New York apartment have reverted to noise listening. Yeah, it depends. Some days better than others. It all depends. It's not always the case. Today's noisier. I can see it. I can see it because usually when I'm here I don't have the S meter as high on some of these frequencies. Mickey Dalmage from Sherwood Park, Alberta. Nice to have you here. Good afternoon. And here it's sunny and cool. Actually, smack in the middle of about what we should have as temperatures, around, you know, lower 60s Fahrenheit, lower 60s, around 15 Celsius, which is perfect. And pretty interesting. David Ogden, the Wellbrook covers the shortwave bands basically, pretty much. So it's really made for the HF, bands. John Evangelo, hey there, from Chesapeake, Virginia, where I hear the Chesapeake weather all the time, and it's pretty cool to have you on board. So yeah, it's 5950, or isn't that 5960? I think 5960 is not hearing much right now, but 5960. Seems to be usually is China Radio International. So it's pretty cool to see everybody here. And Josh Evangelo has got a PL 880. That's fantastic. Dan 805 from North Carolina. Welcome aboard. And nice to have everybody here. So, of course, today we're going to share a little bit of tips, on how to listen and how we listen to the shortwave bands. Somebody had sent me an email the other day and was telling me that basically he was wondering how I get some signals sometimes, like I've been posting a few videos of the military auxiliary radio system MARS from the US Air Force that I hear quite regularly here at the East Coast. And people are wondering, it's like, you got these things that you've got these things that you actually listen to. And I'm wondering, do you have a schedule for these broadcasts? Do you have something that you're using so that you can locate these broadcasts? Now, even though, yeah, there are many MARS nets, for example, that are in a fixed schedule, and usually if you tune, every at the same period, every week at the same time, usually you hear the same net going on. Most of what I hear in the MARS nets is technically almost always by chance, just by tuning around, because that's what I love to do. I have two sides to my radio listening. One is just the program listening, so I'll tune into, say, WRMI and hear some of their broadcasts, and listen to some international broadcasts from different stations. And that's one part, and one evening sometimes I don't feel like tuning around. I want to just listen to international broadcasters. So what I'll do is mostly check the schedules, like on EIBI Space or Primetime Shortwave, and just tune into the broadcast that I can listen to, and I'll have a full evening of just listening to broadcasts. And sometimes that's what I want to do. I don't want to tune around. I just want to listen to Radio Slovakia or Radio Prague, or listen to Ukraine or WRMI's different relays. I want to listen to China, Cuba. There are evenings I just want to tune around, and that's it. Nothing else also. So some nights I use the schedules, I look at what's about to come on the air, and I just tune the frequency, and if it's there, it's there, and I listen to it, and that's all. So for that type of listening, program listening, usually I'll follow schedules from a website, like eibispace.de, which I like because I like lists. But there's variants, and depending on, everybody's different in what we like. So some people like, short-wave.info, for example, which has a different way of giving you the schedules. If you have an Android phone, you can install the Shortwave Schedules app from Stephen Cooper, which is a very good app to just get your schedules for the shortwave stations. And that is one aspect of the shortwave listening hobby, just listening to some program, basically. Joshua Gosnell says, same way, Gel, I like to tune for news and info, and other times I listen to hand bands to see if the hands are open or not. So it's a hobby that has multiple aspects. So some evenings, what I like to do, for example, those that are subscribed to the Spectrum Monitor, the October edition is available today. I just got the email. I was looking at my email just before the show, and I saw the Spectrum Monitor for October is available now. So one thing that I like sometimes to do is I tune in my favorite shortwave broadcasts, and I load up the Spectrum Monitor publication and have a good read of radio stuff while I listen to international broadcasters in the background, which is a kind of a cool thing to do. Fabrice Simonet, bonjour, bienvenue, welcome aboard. And there's another aspect of radio listening that I like also. Hey Bullfrog89, nice to have you on here, by the way. And hello to Michelle and everyone on net. He's KD2CXU, checking in from near Lake Ontario in St. Lawrence River on the US side. Always cool to have you on board. And so the second thing, some evenings I don't want to listen to international broadcasts. Some evenings I don't want to have, Radio Slovakia or things like that. I want to find unusual signals, exotic signals of any kind. So what would I do? Well, then I start tuning around the bands. But the thing is, there's a way of tuning around the bands that you have to understand. You can't just tune everywhere and expect to hear things. I will use some of my knowledge to tune where I know signals might be available. For example, if now I want to do a kind of a tuning around the bands, one of the things that I'll do is, of course, it's late afternoon here. Sun is setting in about 2 hours. Now what I'll do is I know that to the east of me, Europe, Africa, it's nighttime. To the west, it's the daytime. So depending on what I want to listen to, I'll be tuning different frequencies. And as we approach nighttime, of course, I'll go lower and lower in frequency, check out what is available on the shortwave bands. So there's a part of it which is knowledge, knowing where it's day, where it's night. I've talked about that several times, and it really helps you in understanding, what you can hear. And sometimes, you might have a frequency list of all utility signals, for example, and you're thinking, well, I want to try these frequencies. Well, use the knowledge of, usually if you see a signal is at 22 megahertz and it comes from a place where it's in darkness, chances of you listening or hearing it is close to impossible. 22 megahertz usually doesn't propagate through nighttime. Now, once again, like I always say, shortwave isn't cut out like this precisely. There are all sorts of phenomena, depending on where the signal's from, that can make it go through even in the middle of the night. An example of that is, in the times of Radio Australia, I remember when solar activity was high, in the summertime I would listen to 21740 at midnight. It propagated through here at midnight. And because the signal part of the signal is crossing the ocean in the daytime, and even though there was some darkness path in there, it wasn't big enough to actually make that signal not work. So there's a lot of stations that you can surprise. It's very surprising what you can hear depending on their position, where they are in the world. There's the gray line, which is that spot where sun is setting or rising. So it's that terminator line between daytime, nighttime. It has a very unusual aspect in propagation also. So it's very, very surprising what you can hear, I can tell you that. So basically pretty crazy. So you got to of course try to understand, and with the knowledge you have and the time of day it is, you will try different frequencies. And you know what? Don't hesitate to try everything. SDR like I have here is cool because the waterfall kind of shows you their signals. So I know that the lines that are here show signals. So for example, if I look here, well, I know there's a signal right here. I can go and just click on it, and here goes. And this is Saudi Arabia. So I know that 11820 is Saudi Arabia. So with an SDR, it's cool because every chunk of frequency that you look at, you have information. You will know that there are signals that to tune around. But I just want to say that most of the time, I do not, you know, use, a lot of the times I don't use an SDR. So when you don't have that, you tune around, you turn that dial and you tune around and try to find signals. That's the other way of doing it when you don't have an SDR, because most people, let's face it, are tuning around with a regular radio, and they have that tuning dial, and that is what we use to find signals. So it's tuning around, and you know, don't hesitate to tune around everywhere. It's surprising sometimes what you can hear, for sure. David Arden says, when I hear a station I can't identify, I type in the frequency in my browser. I can usually find what I'm listening to. So, you know, that Google is a fantastic way of course, even if you don't go to specific websites. But usually what I do, honestly, is I will, most of the time, use the list, the frequency list of eibispace.de. And if I tune something, say here on 11820, I don't know what that is. Well, you know, they're playing the Holy Quran. So I have an idea already that it probably is Middle Eastern of some sort. I'll do a search, you know, on the PC you can do Control F. And when that list is there, you just type in the frequency. And then it's going to show you an eibispace list. It's going to highlight the frequencies. And you can check out what is propagating at this time on that frequency. So it's a cool way also of easily knowing it. There are many websites also, you know, like HF, shortwave.info, that has a little search box. You can just enter the frequency and it's going to tell you what's on now on that frequency. But Google is your friend, of course, and in some cases, you know, like the MarsNet, what's interesting is that those often are not necessarily listed, but they might be listed in some websites that talk about utility station. Sorry. So some utility stations sometimes will have an entry in some log somewhere. And of course, if you Google it, and you Google it right, you know, so if, for example, here, if you type 11820 in Google and Arabic language, shortwave, whatever, it might actually, you know, find something for you. In utility signals, very often you'll, you know, stumble. So for example, when I was listening to 4016 the other day, there was a MarsNet. Simply typing MarsNet 4016 kilohertz shortwave or 4016 kilohertz upper sideband in Google immediately sent me to a page that was utility stations, and there were logs of MarsNets, and that frequency was in there. So, you know, there's the internet is your friend in here for sure. C. Johnson, do I have any regenerative radios? Nope. I would like to have one though. I've never owned anything like that. I would really like to have one of those for sure. So, hey Brian, Iowa. Oh really? You can hear the footsteps in your subwoofer. There is, the guys downstairs are very noisy, so you know, they open and close doors like a gazillion times so they can go smoke their pot, which is sometimes annoying. And they, you know, and sometimes they have their music. It isn't very loud, but the bass in the music, you'll hear it go through, which is very annoying also. Okay, what else do we have here? Let's just go down the list quite fast. Am I going to try to get some FT8 today? Yeah, why not? I'm going to put it to the on my frequency list. Can you remind me a little later, Bobby, just in case I forget? Some FT8. We'll do that in. Well, it'll be part of the things we're going to do. We're going to try different little things. If you guys want me to decode some shortwave. Hey, Mr. Paul the Cat is here. So he just I left the door open in the backyard because wanted him to come over. Come over, man. Everybody wants to see you. Huh? He's looking at me like, what? What do you want? He wants food. So anyways, Fabrice Simonet. Come on. He's undecided if he wants to come or not. Come on. Yeah, here's Mr. Paul. So, look at everybody. Don't look at the TV. Look here. Look here. People want to see you. Here's Mr. Paul the Cat saying hi to everyone. So, anyways, yep, we're going to do some FT8 today. Why not? We're going to try some JT65, FT8. We'll try a few things, radio teletype. By the way, last week was an amazing radio teletype contest. And on Sunday, I started tuning around. And in an hour and a half, I think I heard 35 countries, including a station from Sweden, another one from Finland. Pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. Fabrice Simonet, does rain affect propagation? Maybe my imagination, but some signals seem to improve during rain. On the shortwave bands, the weather doesn't have an effect that's big enough to really be noticeable in general. And what's happening is that what you might be experiencing is, shortwave propagation is always changing. So what's happening when that propagation is changing is that, of course, the day that it's raining, it might be better for some reason, but it usually doesn't have an effect, much of an effect. So whether, be it rain or a beautiful sunny day, shouldn't have that much of an effect on the shortwave propagation in general. But I understand what you feel, because I don't know how many times I've listened to the shortwave bands and had the impression sometimes that, oh, it's raining and it's better, but most of the time it's just that propagation is better. That's it. It doesn't really necessarily mean that the weather has an effect on it. In general, on the shortwave bands, weather has effect, yes, on some propagation, but not on the HF bands. Weather will have an effect on VHF, UHF frequencies. Reverse, there will be all sorts of phenomena on the VHF, UHF range. Like, for example, temperature inversions will have an effect and can trap signals that make 2-meter signals, for example, go way farther than they usually go. But if we strictly think about, 3 to 30 megahertz of shortwave, no effect really by the weather. The only other thing that can be maybe weather related, and it's the sporadic E-skip. Often when it's really hot and there's a lot of thunderstorms, there seems to be an increase in sporadic E-skip, which will, of course, make high frequency signals propagate. So that might be one effect that you'll get from weather. But in general, your usual 3 to 30 megahertz, weather doesn't really affect it much, except in the summertime we'll have more static crashes because of thunderstorms, stuff like that. So, Bobby Berg is picking up VOA News from WRMI. Oh, really? Are they relaying VOA News now? It's interesting. I'm hearing 93, 95 that well, Rear. Not at this time. I know that there's been that new regulation that the Voice of America can now transmit and be heard by Americans, which is crazy. So 96, 35. Do I hear something? Very weak and within the noise here. There's a little something, but Voice of Turkey, apparently. George Baron, nice to have you here. What is your opinion on the state of shortwave listening for the future? Like I say, shortwave isn't dead. That's very, very, very important to know. That shortwave isn't dead. I do not believe shortwave is dead. Sorry, here I'm just looking at. Okay. Shortwave is different. I think we will have shortwave stations in the future. it's interesting. It's being transformed. The efforts are really nice out of the commercial stations in the United States, like WRMI or WBCQ. So basically, it's kind of interesting to see. So you know, I expect there's going to be a lot of stuff to listen to on shortwave, even in a you know, in 5 or 10 years from now. It's just that it's because shortwave broadcasts are more towards, you know, the Asia or Africa. It makes it a little more difficult for us to hear anything over here, but it is still possible to hear a lot of signals. So let's check it out here. This is Radio Romania on 11850. Let me just try 9610. It's there on 9610 a little bit, but 11850 is better. So Radio Romania International in English. Just take 2 seconds, guys, because I'm gonna give some food to Mr. Paul the cat. I'll leave you with Romania for a few seconds as I go there.
Strengthened by the presence of US forces in Romania and in the region. Combat volumes from Bucharest, Radio Romania International. Montreal continues in Radio Romania International. The controversy over the reform of the justice system was reignited after the Superior Council of Magistracy gave a negative opinion on a bill to amend the justice laws proposed by Minister Tudor. Find out more in this commentary by Bogdan Matei, read by Cristina Matei. As expected by the media, the Superior Council of Magistracy on Thursday gave a negative opinion on a bill to amend the justice laws proposed by the Justice Minister. What came as a surprise for many commentators, however, is the Treasury Council indicates big divisions among its members.
We are back. So, Radio Romania. Joshua, yes, you can record audio off of HDSDR software if you want. You can record the audio from it. Of course, I do often some screen captures with my software Cam Studio, and you can also do a capture if you want of a wide, you know, all the spectrum if you want, for example, and let it record all of that, and the next morning you can check out what happened during the bands during the middle of the night, for example, while you were sleeping. That's something I need to do a few videos about on the channel, show you guys how it works, for sure. David Arden is receiving 93.95 in the greater Atlanta area. Bullfrog89 says, one thing I like about shortwave.info is the fact that is the signal to your location for a given station. I know it's not accurate, but it helps if there are 2 stations on the same frequency. Yeah, of course this does help. That information, by the way, the shortwave.info website uses the information from the list of EIBISpace.de. So that's why I use the list, because I'm used to the abbreviations and what they mean and where the transmitter site is located and where it's broadcasting to. What's nice about a website like shortwave.info is that it actually has a visual of all of this, which is more interesting. So really, really nice. So Fabrice Simones says, in Japan, regenerative radio is an item every household keep close to the hands. You can probably guess why. Yeah, I would guess. Woolman Outdoors, nice to have you here. VA3UMP from Ottawa. Nice to have you here. Dave Todd from Niagara. Pretty cool. Nice to have you here. Brown says, it gets noisy when it rains due to static from the rain. Well, it's not the static electricity from the rain itself. The noise of the rain will mostly be because of the power lines. I always tell that that story when I was living at in another place before here, where there was that moment where there was some where every time it would ring, I would get that electrical high noise that would make shortwave almost useless. And when it was, you know, very dry and sunny, I never have that noise. And I would notice that it would come from the power lines and from the house. So a lot of that is happening. There's a lot of leak in the electricity in the power lines. And when it's very humid or it's raining, well, that makes everything worse. And that makes the shortwave bands a little difficult sometimes. So Dave Todd says, if you haven't earth ground, it may be better with wet soil, lower noise, maybe just it all depends. Yes, in some cases a good ground will lower noise, but you know, remember that if the noise is at your antennas level, your ground will not be of any use in removing it. It's still going to be part of it. But a good ground, and where a good ground is very, very nice is, for example, I have here about 80 feet of coax from the antenna in the back to the radio. Well, the shielding around it needs to be well connected to the ground level, because that shielding to work needs to be grounded. It will prevent the signal, the interference around my home, from getting to the center wire that has the signal that we're getting here. So that will help a lot, tremendously, for sure. Jay Watterson 69, nice to have you here. That's pretty cool. Bobby Burgess says, you got internet versus radio and television. What goes down first? We don't know. Well, it all depends on what's happening. Ali Batashi, nice to have you here. Says, here in Iran it's midnight. My shortwave radio only received 3 to 7 megahertz. What cool things can I pick? Well, you know, even if it's a very limited frequency range, 3 to 7 megahertz, you've got the 49 meter band that in the evening and during the night, 49 meter band is between about 5.8 to 6.5, let's put it really large, megahertz, that has a lot of signals. It's one of the most popular international broadcast bands. So it's mostly, you know, end of the evening, nighttime, but you know, late afternoon, evening and nighttime. But there's a lot of things you can still pick up. Of course, if you could get something that has a wider frequency range. But on 6 megahertz, you could easily get many stations. You could get, in Iran, I'm pretty sure you can get, you know, on that frequency range, Romania. You probably can get, you know, China Radio, and many other stations that are in that vicinity also, that broadcast on around 6 megahertz. And you have the possibility of hearing, you know, the tropical band for 4.5 to 5 megahertz, a little more than 5 megahertz. In there, there's going to be some stations, pretty sure, that you can hear. And tune around. And if you can put a little piece of wire outdoors, I don't know exactly what's the model you've got, but it's very, very interesting. What kind of radio do you have? Yeah, that's probably for the Halley question. If you can tell us what model receiver you've got, maybe. That's this for me. This is the Ephedry SDR. Pujo Jojo, nice to have you here. Says, awesome to see your show again. Well, nice to have you on board again also. James Megawatt, nice to have you here. It's been a while. Juan Amigo, nice to have you here. ¿Cómo está, mi amigo? Joshua Gosnell says he's picking up Radio Romania on 11.850. I'm getting there, guys. I'm a little far back in the chat. Ethel Welsh, hey, nice to have you on board from Ottawa. Salvo Morena says, can you please verify for Radio Vancouver on 15370? 15370, let's check it out. And it is... I don't see... Yeah, I think it's there, but it's in the noise for me. But I would guess it's there, and there's a very, very thin line here. So it's probably too noisy for me, but it is there. It is there on the frequency, pretty sure. Persian Radio Fan says, hi everyone. I can receive Radio Armenia on 4810 in the evening, and HK on 6020, Radio Farda 5860, among others. That's nice. Cool catches. Never heard Armenia on 4810 here. That would be really, really nice. Hey Jerry DX, nice to have you on board. And says, power lines and shortwave are a bad mix. Absolutely. So, Bullfroggy Nice says, hope you don't plan getting out tonight. Just getting rain at this end of the river. Be making it your way soon. No, actually, from what I've seen this morning, it's like going to be sunny for the next week or so. And we're even going to get back up into a little warmer temperatures. As long as it's not warm like we had this week. I mean, this week was way too hot for me. We were in the almost in the 90s. We were almost in the 90s on Fahrenheit. You know, 30, 31, 32 degrees Celsius. Just crazy. Richard is receiving something on 15370, but audio is very quiet. There's been a lot of problems with the audio on Radio Vancouver. Really, really crazy. The audio quality has been very, very bad at Radio Vancouver lately. So really crazy. Capable Guardian says, total newbie, just got a Texan PL660. Well, that for first thing that I gotta say is an excellent radio. So if anything can catch a signal, the Texan PL660 is going to be one of those great radios that you will have an amazing time with. And do tune around a lot with that radio, because I can tell you're going to hear a lot of stuff. So PL660 is amazing. I've got the PL600 and PL680 here, and they are amazing. Also got the cheaper PL380, which is also very, very good. And the PL660 has single sideband capability, so it will help you listen in on more signals, even more of those things that you can listen to. So pretty cool. Bud Householder, nice to have you here in Ohio, and glad to have you here for sure. Pujo Jojo says got an Elecraft KX3 with 80-meter dipole, and it receives awesome from here in central Louisiana. These are amazing receivers, and that pretty sure you've got some great. Interesting. Sheldon says 40% chance of showers this evening. So they've changed it a little bit. Last I've checked was like this morning. So no, I'm not gonna. I'm gonna be staying home and taking it easy and relaxed tonight for sure. Radio Vancouver, from what I hear, David Harden, has two types of transmitters now. They have some old Russian transmitters from the Soviet communist era, but they also have some new transmitters that are from China, that of course due to the partnership with China Radio International. But for some reason the audio is always low, so it's not a transmitter problem. I think it's more of a really more of a It's you know, it's as if the audio is not fed strong enough, basically. So yeah, it's possible that rain's coming my way. I haven't, you know, I looked at the weather this morning around 9, so it might have changed during the day, because this morning they were not announcing anything. So it's probably changed during the day. Joe Stokesbury, nice to have you here. And says, got a new Kato 345 AM FM shortwave radio with MP3, sensitive for its size. So, that's an interesting little device. I'll have to take a look at that for sure. Luis Arevalo, nice to have you here. And nice to have you on board as usual. 86 UP. And it's pretty nice. For sure. So anyways, we're talking about shortwave radio, and of course some of the things and the habits and the way that I tune around the shortwave bands. And of course I was saying that, so sometimes I want to do some program listening, sometimes I want to do some you know, utilities, just tune around everywhere. Now one of the things that I often will do if I tune around, and especially when you tune around with a portable receiver that has single sideband, or my tabletop, like my ICOM ICR8500, if I start tuning everywhere, what I will often do is tune in upper sideband and move up in frequency slowly. So why use single sideband? Very simple. You might not hear, and that's what I was actually doing right now. So for example, this is a frequency where Cuba is usually. I kind of see something here, but you're not sure. And if I listen, don't really hear anything. But if I put myself in upper sideband and tune below the frequency, do you hear this tone? Well, that tone is telling me that there is a carrier. So there is a signal on 15370. So I might not be hearing audio. I might not, you know, in this case I know that it's probably Cuba with very low audio. But at least the single sideband mode, with the tone that it gave me on the AM signal that's broadcast here, actually confirmed to me, yeah, they're there. There's a signal there. And the only thing is, it's not strong enough to overpower my noise, and if the audio is low, well, you know, doesn't help also. So single sideband, you know, is one of the cool ways that you tune around. Well, often what I'll do is do a mix of single sideband and a mix of AM. So for example, we all know 90%, 95% of everything in international broadcast bands is in AM mode. So usually what I'll do, stay in AM when I'm in international broadcast bands. So that of course means you got to kind of remember what are the frequency ranges for the international broadcast bands. But if you know you're inside one of the international broadcast bands, usually I stay on AM and slowly tune around to see what signal I'll hear in that frequency range. But if I'm outside, so for example, say here I decide that I want to tune the 8 megahertz range, so 8,000 to 9,000. There's no international broadcasts in there. It's mostly utilities, and utilities are anyways mostly in upper sideband. So I'll put myself in upper sideband, and I will start tuning the frequency range in upper sideband. Now here I've got an SDR, so I can quickly go to whatever I see. But if you have a radio with a tuning dial, you'll of course tune around slowly and go up, starting at 8 megahertz up to 9.23 megahertz, because we'll start at the 31 meter band around there. And because of the added capability of picking up very weak signals in upper sideband, it's going to help you hear even very weak signals within the noise, for sure. So you'll be able to, so here there's a Stanag signal, but you'll be able to try out and try to hear something around the bands by tuning in upper sideband. So you'll go through the different signals, and hopefully you'll be able to, tune in something, hear something that's available on the bands. And it's easy to go over signals that are very weak. So one of the things that you need to remember is remember to tune in slowly. So if you go from one end of a spectrum to another end of spectrum in sideband, don't go too fast. Don't move at 5 kilohertz steps. Move at 1 kilohertz steps, and don't go too fast. The weak stuff, sometimes that is the real DX and the real interesting stuff, is easy to go over without knowing, because you're tuning too fast. So patience is a very, very important thing in the radio hobby. Slowly tuning up in frequency, trying to find the signals, is a great way to find exotic signals and unusual stuff on the bands. And that has rewarded me a lot with some of the videos that I've posted with unusual transmissions. Like when I hear these weird fishermen or whatever transmission that are on the band, sometimes with people talking. Last one that I posted is pretty much everybody agrees is kind of Brazilian Portuguese. It's by slowly tuning and looking at what's in the case here. It's looking at what's in the waterfall, looking at what weak signal within the waterfall is actually in here, and trying to get a signal within that waterfall to tune around. So of course you slowly tune around, and the SDR is fun because you have the added bonus of checking out what you can listen by just clicking on frequency ranges where you see some signals go through. But very, very important to be patient, and that's where a single sideband receiver is amazing for that, because you just tune slowly, for sure. What's the beverage for tonight? Not often see you with a wine glass. This is a friend of mine that makes apple cider. This is unfiltered apple cider, which is extremely good, I gotta say. It is very refreshing and very good, and but it is like 10% of alcohol content. It's almost like wine, so you gotta go easy on it, but it's really good. And every year that friend actually makes it, and he always gives me like a couple of bottles. So I've got a couple of bottles of apple cider. I will not drink a couple of bottles in front of the camera, so I'll be really drunk at the end of the show. But I'll have a couple of I'll have a few glasses for sure. So cheers, everybody. Okay, what else do we have? Liviu Gabrielu says compare websdr.org. Yeah, there's a lot of things. One of the things I want to talk about with that, because there's a lot of talk about how, oh God, I don't want to use online radio receivers because it's cheating, because we gotta get over, first of all, one thing, okay? Get over the fact that it's cheating. Web receivers, web SDRs that you can tune in from your computer are actually fun, because one of the things, there are a few things that I like about those. First, comparing signals. For example, I might be tuning a signal that comes from Europe, and I might think to myself, hey, I'm going to try to find a another East Coast receiver in the United States to see how strong is it received in different parts of the East Coast compared to here in Montreal, for example. SDRs are great for, you got to face it, there are some stations you can't hear. KNLS in Alaska, forget it. That is impossible here in Montreal. The best that I've ever had was a very weak interval signal that I heard. And that's pretty much it. Why? Because they're broadcasting towards the Asian region. And basically, for that kind of listening, it's fun. Because, I will use, for example, the Hong Kong receiver in the global tuners. And I'll tune in KNLS signal there and see how it, is received, which is kind of cool, And so there's a side to this which is nice. Online receivers are also a great way to have people that wonder, a lot of people wonder, should I spend $100 on the radio? And a lot of people have a lot of priorities of, that $100 can go towards a lot different things. Well, one of the things is that if you want to see if shortwave's for you, well, using an online receiver for a while can maybe give you the idea that, what, I like this. I like the hobby. I want to have my own radio now and tune in to signals. So, there's a lot of little things like that are cool. So, for sure. Cuban lady, due in 7 minutes. So it's almost there on 11,635. Let's position ourselves there. Here. Cuban numbers, 11,635, being heard pretty well. So, actually better than usual. I've not been receiving 11,635 that well lately. So this is Cuban number station. Or Cuban spy station. So 11,635, the Cuban number station. Joshua Gosnell says the TVDO V115 is for him is the best. The V115, I want to try it in a environment that's different. That's different from the one I am here. One of the biggest problems that I have at this location is a very strong FM stations that break through. So when a shortwave radio isn't well, isn't well shielded, isn't well designed, a lot of them have here FM radio breakthrough. The problem I got with the V115 of TVDO is FM breakthrough, and that is my biggest problem. Now, I've compensated in a way. I found out that when I go to a specific place in my kitchen, I can actually have reception of stations on the V115 quite well because the FM station breakthrough isn't there. So I'd like to try the V115, but in an area far away from FM stations where there's no overload of these signals within the radio. Because I suspect that the V115 in an urban area like I have is crap because of that flaw of having too much FM station breakthrough. But I suspect that when you're in an area where FM stations are very, or much weaker, or if you live in a rural area, or you're somewhere far from civilization, I suspect that the V115 could actually be quite surprising because it is very sensitive. I have to say, for a radio, such a cheap radio, I gotta say, it's pretty surprising. James Megawatt, what is the cheapest but still good single sideband CW battery powered receiver? For single sideband, I'd go with a Texan PL 600 or Texan PL 660. If you can find the original Degen DE1103, not the new DSP one, they are probably the cheapest receivers with single sideband that are really worth it to use. There's nothing much below, you know, there's really nothing much below $50 or $60 that has actually below 60. There's really nothing with single sideband that I'm aware of, but you know, there's still some Degen DE1103 going around here from time to time, and it is around 60 to 70 US dollars, which is not very expensive for radio, and it works really well. The Degen DE1103 is a great radio. Single sideband works fantastically well. The Texan PL600 has a flaw on single sideband, I would say. If signals on single sideband are a little strong, they kind of flutter. It's as if the oscillator or the BFO isn't stable enough. Something that's not present in the PL660 or 680 receiver. Fabrice Simonet says Texan PL660. I would pretty much agree with that for sure. Luis Arevalo says, I get Cuban signals very good from day to night. Carl Tench, nice to have you here. Happy birthday. And wow, it's nice to have you on board, and hope that you'll have a fun and have been having a fun birthday. So it's pretty cool. Yeah, Texan PL 680 is amazingly good and works very well for single sideband. David Arden says, James, I have heard good things about the Texan radios. I have a Sony ICF SW7600JR. Very good radio. Does SSB very well. A must for me. So, of course, the Sony ICF 7600 is a very good radio, for sure. Persian radio fan, which one is less energy consumer? That's a good question, honestly. I don't know. I'd have, you know, one thing that could be interesting is, are receivers more energy efficient as time goes by? So if I tune, you know, if I leave my PL 600 and 680 that were designed a couple of years apart, is battery performance on the later model at 680 better? I don't know. Most of them are quite good though for battery performance, but it is true that when you have a portable radio, especially if you go somewhere where you're far away from, you know, where you can get new batteries or anything, battery performance can be a very important thing, for sure. But most receivers are pretty amazing battery-wise, I have to say. Most that I've seen, and lately it's been very nice. Mad Radio DXer, nice to have you on board. I use Amazon Basics NIMH rechargeables, and they're amazingly good, and been giving me many hours of radio listening. Joe Stogsberry says number lady on 11635. Luisa Arevalo, what happened to Voice of America? Voice of America is still on the air. It's still there. I hear their 15580 frequency quite often. One thing that I've read somewhere, I think is, I'm not sure, I think I read it in the Canadian International DS Club Facebook page that had an article about, or somebody had an article about how Voice of America is now going to be able to be received in the United States, which was kind of something that was not supposed to be. So it's kind of funny that you have a you know, international voice, but it's not meant for Americans. It's kind of weird. But apart from that, Voice of America is still on the air. 15580 is coming in pretty good here. Robert Babcock, nice to have you here. Joe Stocksberry, receiving numbers lady, the number lady. What else do we have here? Mad Reader DXer says, I find using the Asian SDRs great. Enjoy receiving medium wave signals on them from Japan, South Korea. Now that's also a fun part of using an online software-defined radio. I mean, the fact that you can, you know, receive medium wave stations from Asia, from all parts of the world, in an area that, you know, you can't listen to medium wave here from Japan in normal conditions, let's say, because I'm sure somebody somewhere must have DX a Japanese medium wave station somehow. But I mean, in general, it's you know, pretty difficult. So using online software-defined radios is cool for that also. Receiving, you know, or even, you know, for the fun of it, tuning around FM band and trying to see what type of broadcasting you got there. It's a pretty cool thing. So Robert Babcock says, just got an ICOM R75, like it for shortwave. It's an amazing radio, the R75, and it is a great radio. Anyway, to do digital with it, well, if you mean digital by digital signals, it's all just plugging the audio into the input of your computer and using you know, multi-PSK or FLDG software and decoding signals. That's pretty much it. That is also something, absolutely, Sheldon. People really need to understand the difference between shortwave listening and DXing, and that is a major thing. And you know what? I will go fill myself a little more of some apple cider, and we will talk about that difference, because I think that's also something that a lot of people don't understand much. So as we go somewhere, I will try to tune something that you guys can listen to, and here goes. Okay, it sounds like Radio Slovakia in 11580, and it was. So I'm gonna get a little more cider, and we're gonna talk about the difference. So, what's the difference? And that is a very interesting aspect of the hobby also. There's also other things that we got to understand about shortwave and radio listening in general. There's shortwave listening, which is more of you just want to listen to international broadcasters, do the easy listening thing where you just tune around the signals that you get and that's it. Do some program listening from different stations like Romania and so on. But there's also an aspect of the hobby, and it's called DXing. And DXing is the search for long distance signals. And you might say, well, you know, Radio Romania is a long distance signal. Romania's far from North America. Yeah, but that's not DXing, because it's an easy to pick up signal. It's more like shortwave listening. DXing is more complex. You'll usually want to find you know, weaker stations. Often they're much weaker. They're more difficult to get because they might be close to other signals that are stronger. they might be difficult to get because of the low power they use. DXing is a part of the hobby that refers to really trying to pick up unusual signals. So part of my hobby, part of the fun I have is DXing. It's going through the frequency ranges and trying to find that elusive, very, very unusual signal from somewhere around the world that you never hear. It's checking out maybe that weak station from whatever island in the Pacific Ocean that you never hear, but you try regularly, and someday propagation just makes it possible. And DXing is more of a search of unusual signals everywhere. And that is another aspect of our hobby, which is very, very different. So basically, that's also the aspect of DXing. And also, you know, like Sheldon says, if you're really interested in hearing the content of programs from various stations, doesn't matter whether you hear it over the radio, live streaming through a web page, or using a remote tuner. If you're a DXer, then you want to hear the signals on your own radio using your own antenna from your own location. And that is true. A DXer will want to get the signals. You know, my fun is, okay, I listen to KBS World Radio here because I can't hear their signal really. But I got to say one thing, as a shortwave listener, but more like as a DXer, I want to hear it from South Korea on 15575, which for me is so much more fun. It's like, hey, I'm receiving a signal from the other side of the earth from South Korea, which is more interesting. When I do it on my Android phone, it's more on the aspect of simply wanting to listen to the program, the content that they have to give me. Of course, DXing doesn't mean you can't listen to the content. It's just that it's sometimes more difficult. But DXing is an aspect where you want the possibility to hear something weak, something unusual from your radio and your setup with your antenna and everything. Radio Rebelde and 5025, really, Richard. Wow, that's a pretty good catch, Radio Rebelde, for Europe, because it is pretty. You're pretty far off from them, but Rebelde here is a regular in the evening. The evening, it's very, very easy to hear Rebelde here in North America. Just checking out a few frequencies here. So, Woolman Outdoors says 7200 lower sideband, creepy bunch of people having an argument, insulting each other. That is, you know, a 7200 lower sideband, 14313 upper sideband are those frequencies where, you know, it's a total disgrace of the amateur radio hobby in general, basically, I have to say. And it's totally crazy. I mean, I have a lot of difficulty. You know, how do these folks on 7200 manage to keep their privileges? Because they almost never ID. They almost, yeah. You know what, Mad Radio DXer, by the way? I saw you a long time ago, and I wanted to say hi, and I, for some reason, got distracted, and I would see your name come up regularly. And I was like, okay, I gotta say hi. I haven't said hi yet. It sometimes happens to me. It's some kind of a, I don't know, some kind of a flaw somewhere. Oh, God. I'm amazed at what you can receive, Richard Cook, with your receiver and that Walbrook antenna. Pretty amazing. And it's pretty cool. Daniel Wash says, for me, NYC, it's either SDR or stamp collecting. SDR all the way. I'm jealous in an event. You know, one of the things that is is what was I about to say? Oh, the 7200 frequency. But you guys had said, well, how can they keep their privileges? It's really, really, you know, listen carefully. They don't ID much. They don't tend to give out, you know, identifications of any kind. Very rarely you'll hear a ham radio operator that will actually give a call sign. Because I can bet you that a lot of them would get flagged by the FCC. But you know, it's part of the sad state of some people of amateur radio that are just idiots. Like every hobby and like everything in life, they're idiots, and there are people that are just not capable of running, and they're not. You know, we think of the amateur radio hobby as a as a minimum of standards, a minimum of quality in how you operate and how you should know things. You know, one of the things that I've talked about with Fastload that you guys see sometimes in the chat room. You know, we often go together to the same bar, have a few beers. And it's amazing how many times we stumbled upon the subject of amateur radio, and we're kind of amazed at how little knowledge a lot of amateur radio operators have in the field. You know, considering that to get your ham license, there's kind of a minimum requirement of electronics and of radio rules that you kind of need to understand, but you feel that that minimum isn't really getting through because you hear amateur radio operators and you listen to them, and for very, very simple things, you're like, wow, that, okay, he's got his ham license and he doesn't know that. And that, I have to say, is kind of troubling a little bit, because it means, okay, you've passed it, but you don't really understand it. And so, you know, there's all sorts of things in the amateur hobby. Gabriel says 4625, you mean 4625 UVB 76 in upper sideband. I heard it very weakly last week. I'll need to try it out maybe tonight to see. But, you know. Joe Starksberry says shortwave listening is like being a detective. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of detective work in shortwave listening. I mean, you start tuning around and you try to find signals, and you're like, okay, I'm tuning around, I'm trying to find anything here. What could be, you know, that signal that I hear on this or that frequency. So, there's something here. So you tune around, and you know, there's part of what I'm hearing very weakly on 11253, the Royal Air Force from the UK. It's not very strong, but it's there. 11253 upper sideband. Mario the DXer says, here's the thought. If I am DXing, scanning the shortwave bands, and I receive Powerhouse too easy to receive CRI at 1000 kilowatts, does that count as a DX catch when DXing? Well, let's just say that DXing has a definition that's vague enough that, I don't know, you might... I will not consider China Radio International as DXing, that's for sure. I will not consider China Radio International in the evening as DXing. Like I do not consider Cuba DXing or Romania DXing. Yet, you can consider China Radio, okay, and that's my output, okay? I'll give you guys my idea of that. I might consider China Radio International a DXing moment if I get its signal from Beijing directly. For me, that even though yes, they are using high power, even though they're probably using 500 kilowatts in there, I will consider CRI, not aimed at my area, received from Beijing as a DX target. Because it's much harder at that point. Even though they're very strong, it's more difficult. For me, that would be DXing. I don't know. Where does that might be a good question for the chat room. Where does that DXing term end or start? I think it has space for interpretation depending on who you are and what you think of DXing. For me, CRI from Beijing directly is DXing. CRI to North America in the evening from Albania is cool, fun to receive. I don't consider it DXing. I don't know. What about you guys? What do you think? What do you think? Bobby, I've not put the filter. Actually, I wasn't asked. I think I'll have to go into the settings to enable it, but I will enable it because I did like the use of it yesterday. I thought it worked fine yesterday, so I think it's cool. Yeah, Captain Dave. You know, that's a gray area. Look at Captain Dave on that 80-meter frequency. That's kind of a gray area of an amateur radio operator. It's kind of not within the guidelines that it should be. Richard Cook's receiving BPM 5000, and it's been there since 1730 UTC. Wow, pretty good. We'll take a little break for a second, just to promote my little something, my little channel. So if you enjoy what I do, guys, please think about it. PayPal.me/shortwave is one great way to help me out. Patreon.com/radio and computers. You can become a patron. Be very careful the way you set it up. Make sure you have a limit because it can be very surprising. That's why I tend to think that PayPal might be a better idea for most people. You can join 12 patrons that I have here that give me a little something every month. PayPal.me, certain number of people that of course help me out. So PayPal.me/shortwave is a great way where you can send me a little something. You know, it's very simple. Without donations, I would not have been able to go through the past year with the crappy AdSense, and it really helped me tremendously. And continuing what I like to do, these live shows that visibly a lot of you enjoy also. I tend to always go a little farther there when I talk about donations. Try to get that person that have never donated. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that actually are, your regular viewers that are in the chat or not in the chat that have never donated and maybe are in the possibility of donating. And think about it. If you enjoy these shows, you enjoy the fact that I take a lot of time to actually do these shows and spend hours a week creating content. Why not, think about it and help me out in some way. Like I like to say is, it's not always to the same people to give something. It's fun when there's like diversity around it. So thanks to everybody that have donated. It is much appreciated. It's very cool. It helped me tremendously, and it helps me continue in doing this content and doing these live shows and bringing everybody together in the radio hobby and just having a lot of fun. So thanks for your donations, and PayPal or Patreon, whatever you choose. Thanks for supporting me. It is much appreciated. Okay, let's now go back here. Mad Radio DX. Well, okay. C. Johnson says, I think should still be DX regardless on station power. Well, I will not. For me, DX doesn't have and is not related to station power. And the basic idea of DX being listening to distant station, technically means that everything could be technically for someone, everything could be DX. Let's face it, okay? Even though with the big, huge power, receiving China Radio International from Albania to North America is still quite amazing. Even though they have strong power, they have, 500 kilowatts in there. Really, think about it. From Albania to North America. That's a pretty cool distance. And the term DX would technically put it in the possibility of that being a, DX, that you're receiving a DX station from somewhere else. I mean, I would guess. No, I don't know. It's and like Man Radio DXer says, in my opinion, it's in the eye of the beholder. Absolutely, because there's no real definition of DX. DX being just listening from far away. But he says, but I understand when there is a limit to say what is considered DXing. I'll have the same limit. I will not consider China Radio broadcast to North America DXing, because for me that is something that is it's an easy target. For me, DXing is a more exotic thing. For me, DXing is, in my opinion, DXing is receiving the things that are not the usual things that you'll hear all the time. Things that are weaker, more difficult. For me, DXing, 11253, the Royal Air Force. I'd consider that DXing, because these are much weaker signals. The buzzer in 4625 will be, that's DXing. It's very weak. It's a very difficult thing to do. Receiving Radio Japan, which doesn't have an English broadcast to North America, but has English or even French from different parts of the world. That will be more of a DXing, I will say. Take care, PLF Radio. It was nice to have you on board. Radio, if we think about it. So let's take a look at this. According to Wikipedia, DXing is the hobby of receiving and identifying distant radio or television signals, or making two-way radio contacts with distant stations. Many DXers also attempt to obtain written verifications of reception or contact, sometimes referred to as QSLs. The name of the hobby comes from DX, telegraphic shorthand for distance. The practice of DXing arose during the early days of radio broadcasting. Listeners would mail reception reports to radio broadcasting stations in hopes of getting a written acknowledgement or a QSL card that served to officially verify they had heard a distant station. So, DXing remains popular among dedicated or shortwave listeners. The pursuit of two-way contact between distant amateur radio operators is also a significant activity within the amateur radio hobby. So, it's purely talking about distant stations, which technically just means anything we listen to that is far away is DXing. So, I think what is interesting is, I think we consider, depending on who we are and how we listen, we might have a variation in our mind of what we consider DXing. But in reality, any faraway signal is DXing. Hey there, Radioactive. Nice to have you on board. So, Manuel DXer says, I do DAB DXing even when I get a transmitter 50 miles away. For me, that is rare to receive. I still consider a DX catch, as DAB signals are much weaker than FM signals. Well, okay, let's put it on on the scale of the FM transmissions. I like to sometimes DX the FM band. And for me, DXing, you know, some people wait for sporadic E-skip phenomena to get some DXing or faraway stations from really, really far away, like 1,000 miles. Personally, DXing on the FM band for me, if I get an FM broadcast from 100 kilometers away in a usual FM mode, you know, no DAB or anything, for me that's DXing. I'm getting a faraway signal on the FM band, so it is DXing. It is, you know, it's. I think a lot of us have a different view of what DXing is. You know, in the very simple terms that we've seen on Wikipedia right now, just listening to distant station is DXing. So everything we hear is DXing. You know. Luis Arevalo says, why does shortwave radio have their radio transmitters in other countries? That's relays, Luis. Basically, if we go back, you know, I've been listening for more than 35 years to the shortwave bands. In the 80s, okay, just to give you guys an idea, in the 80s and in the 70s, relays were not common. We would usually tune in a station from its original country. So back in the 80s, Radio Beijing, which is China Radio today, which was Radio Peking even farther back, we'd receive that direct from Beijing. And it was a hard thing, you know, especially with the receivers I had. It was a difficult thing to do, receiving you know, Radio Beijing from China. It was a difficult thing receiving Radio Japan from the Yamata Japan transmitter site. Relays did not really exist. So at some point the idea came of, hey, if we have difficulty reaching a target audience, why not use relays? So China Radio, for example, decided to use relays from different countries that are closer to the target area, so it's easier for us to listen to it. So China Radio has Albania, has Cuba, has a few places where they actually transmit from. Radio Japan now broadcasts from Madagascar, broadcasts from different areas. They used to broadcast from Sackville transmitter site here in Canada, when Radio Canada International had its transmitter site. You know, I find it sad that they've teared down the antennas, because I think the Sackville transmitter site in Canada would have been an amazing place to, you know, why not rent to relay broadcasts from Sackville, New Brunswick. So, you know, as time goes by, they understand that, well, relays is a great way to get the target audience. It's also another thing, and that's something that comes up a lot. You know, transmitters are expensive to operate, expensive to maintain, and at some point, stations might find that it's so costly to transmit from their own transmitters that the idea of transmitting from a relay is kind of cool, because they don't have all that cost suddenly. They just have to pay a specific fee for a number of hours they use a transmitter, which is usually much less than operating their own transmitters. So, for example, Radio Slovakia, Radio Prague, Radio Ukraine, all of these stations have found that, hey, if we use WRMI transmitters, we get into North America easily, because it's a great place for the broadcast to North America. It doesn't cost us much money. So that's why using transmitters in other countries is a good idea. You know, I remember one of the earliest stations that I remember being relayed, what today is called Radio Taiwan International, In the 80s, it was called Voice of Free China. It was the same station. It's just that it was called Voice of Free China back then. Well, they, in the 80s, were actually relaying their programs from WIFR. Basically, same transmitters that WRMI are using today in Okeechobee, Florida. And I remember thinking, oh, this is kind of interesting. We get a good reception of Taiwan every night because it's from Florida instead of Taiwan. Yeah, I understand one thing. There's part, and we're talking about DXing, by the way. For some reason, even though the term DXing, that's again goes to what we are actually saying in our mind and what we think is DXing or not, depending on each other, how we think about it. So, receiving, Voice of Free China, which was Radio Taiwan from WRFI in Florida, was not maybe DXing that much. Then again, if I put myself in the context of when I was 14 years old, DXing for me was just finding new signals and tuning around. So Voice of Free China from Florida was DXing anyways, because it was like, oh, I got this new station from far away, even though it's from Florida. So, it all depends. It all depends. David in Barcelona, nice to have you on board as usual. Sheldon says, in my mind, shortwave listeners are those that are listening mainly for the program content. Yeah, that I totally agree. The Xers are more interested in just hearing stations regardless of what they are broadcasting. Yep, that would be a nice definition of a shortwave listener versus a DXer. And then after that, well, I think there's the hardcore DXer that is, for him, DXing is more listening to some things that are more, more exotic for some reason. But technically, just tuning around trying to find signals, it's that's DXing. We can consider that DXing. Whatever the signal you get, whatever signal you receive. Totally. David Arden says, Sheldon, I agree with you. Like both. That is part of magic of radio. There's always something to do. Absolutely. That the biggest part is to think about enjoying the hobby and having fun just tuning around shortwave. Peter Bishma says, Jill, I know a bit more about Windows 10 than shortwave. Radioactive says, to me, when I think of DX, it is when I receive a signal that is outside my country. When most hams call CQDX, they're calling for stations outside of US. That's, once again, it's a DX. It's an interpretation of DX. Also, it's an interpretation that some ham radio operators have. I understand it, but when you think about it, a station in New England that is talking to a station in California is as far away if that station would be talking to Europe. And it can still be considered DX. So here it has more of a relation of, well, I want to talk to somebody that's not in my own country. Same here. If an amateur radio operator from Quebec speaks to an amateur radio operator in British Columbia, that's a hell of a nice DX. Technically, because it's far away. It's as far as broadcasting to Europe again. So two hands in the radio. Got a haircut, looks good. Yeah, thanks. Been a couple of weeks now, something like that. So Manuel DX says stations like CRI using relay have saved some shortwave transmitters from being. Well, that also is very interesting, because you know what? There's a lot of shortwave transmitters. Just look at Madagascar. I mean, thanks to the amazing amount of relays being done through Madagascar, that transmitter site is, you know, being used a lot and is being kept alive. So yes, it is true that you know, it's good for that. You know, look at WRMI. Remove the relays as we've got right now. I'll tell you one thing: they have Brother Stare. That's it. And remove Brother Stare, and WRMI cannot be a viable solution to keep their transmitters on. Thanks to the fact that WRMI bought the Okeechobee, Florida transmitter site. Because when WYFR family radio, thanks to the idiot guy that was like always saying that it was the end of the world every 10 years, kind of destroyed WRFI pretty much in their programming and what they were as a station and as a religious broadcaster. Without WRMI, WYFR would have, you know, nobody would have, I don't, remove WRMI, I don't think nobody would have bought anything from the Okeechobee, Florida transmitter site, which is an amazing site for transmitting on shortwave. Joe Stoggsbury says Glenn Hauser is the ultimate DXer. Well, he dedicates a lot of time and effort in the hobby, that's for sure. It's interesting because, you know, talking of Glenn Hauser, I've been seeing a lot of, there's a post that went through on a group that I've seen where a lot of people started talking about Glenn Hauser. And you know, I totally respect Glenn Hauser and what he does. I still think that World of Radio, is an amazing program. But there's a lot of, I see a lot of complaints of people saying, oh, well, you know, he rants about this or that, and he's like, well, you know, it's his thing. It's like, you know, I rant about things. We sometimes rant about things. And you know what? It's the way it is. I mean, we all have our own way of doing things. You might not agree with everything I say or do. You might not agree with, you know, a lot of what everybody says or what Glenn Hauser has to say. But he has his own thing, and he does put a lot of energy, and I still consider World of Radio an interesting show. You know, some of the people were complaining of how he, you know, he rants about different shortwave programs. Well, it's his right, you know, and that's okay. I mean, I don't, you know, I filter out a lot of things with World of Radio. I filter out the, well, there's this crap show of that thing on that program on that station. That's not the kind of information that I'm interested in. With World of Radio, I'm more interested in, oh, okay, there's that station and that frequency. Oh, there's that exotic station that reactivated there. Oh, there's that thing from, you know, LRA 36 in Antarctica. That's the information I gather and I keep. The rest about he likes or not a program is not relevant for me, because for me, it's I'll decide if I like or not a specific program. It's like listening to stations on shortwave. You know, I told you guys at the beginning of the show, one of the things I like to do is listen to programs from time to time. So, you know, on an evening, I'll just tune in the broadcast and listen. I'll be a shortwave listener for an evening. Now, I don't like everything I hear on shortwave. It's not because it's on shortwave that it's interesting. There are things I don't like. You know, like Radio Romania, when it starts playing Romanian music, I'm not interested. Okay? And it's my thing. I'm not interested in that. But there are shows like when they start talking about, you know, the communist times of Romania or all sorts of Romanian culture or events or life in Romania. That I'm a big fan. And for every station that will be the same. But every station has interesting stuff and boring stuff. But it all depends on what you like. Some people will say, hey, the Romanian music is fantastic. Okay, that's your right. I just ain't very, Romanian music inclined. That's it. But you're right. For some of you, that might be really cool to listen to. And I'm not saying that that's a bad program. I'm just saying it ain't what interests me. Robert James, when I was a kid living near Chicago, and welcome aboard, by the way, Robert. I once got a broadcast of a Pirates game from Pittsburgh on AM radio. It blew me away, my first DX experience, and have been hooked ever since. Absolutely. Once again, just take a second to think about that moment and how, okay, I'll be fair. DXing has changed. The idea of what DX means for me has changed through the years. Look at David in Barcelona. Says, in my case, I consider signals to be DX if 1, it's from another continent, 2, weak. So, a blasting signal from CRI transmitted from the Kashi site in China is not DX for me. So you see, we kind of have a different and a varying idea of DXing, which is very interesting because I never thought about that until today, where we're really talking about it in a much more interesting way. And thanks for Sheldon to have posted the Wikipedia link, because it's interesting, because at the basics, there's no, if you just look at the definition of DX, there's no awkwardness or anything that we it's just I'm listening to a faraway station and that's it. I'm DXing. That's DX. Whether it's 100 kilometers from me or 1,000 miles from me or 2,000 miles from me, it's technically DX. It's long distance communications. But I think some of us that are in the hobby and that have listened much more have changed our way of thinking of what is a DX target. And I think it evolves with us depending on how many signals we've heard through the years and how we search all the time for new signals. So it's very interesting. Very interesting to see the different way that we all think about that. Kind of interesting. Kind of interesting here. And I think for some of us it evolves with the with our hobby. That's very, very interesting. That's very interesting. Two Hands in a Radio says DXing is the hobby of receiving and identifying distant radio or television signals. Canada to Florida would be DXing. Yeah, absolutely. Technically. Mad Radio DXer says, when I think of DX, I think of DX the cat. Well, he came from a great distance, so I can say that having DX the cat is DXing. I've DX feline. Kind of interesting. Well, that's interesting. Okay, and once again, shows that we all have our our definition, our own mental definition of what DXing is all about. David says DXing depends on the frequency as well. For example, a French station is not DX to me on HF, but if I receive an FM station from Paris, that definitely is. Yeah. Of course, it's more difficult to get that FM station from Paris to Barcelona than it is to get Radio France International from France to Spain. I get your drift in that, but you know, it's interesting to see. I think we all evolve in thinking in thinking what is DXing exactly. We evolve, our mind changes its idea of DXing, and you know, I'll have to say, for me, DXing is not just tuning around signals. It's getting signals, exotic signals, weird signals from somewhere far away, and I'm like, wow, this is cool, and that is more of an idea of DXing that I have. So, Dan805, nice to have you from North Carolina. And covered in grass, mowing the lawn. Smells good, mowing the lawn smells good. Have I tried, okay, let's check it out here. Okay, let me just check it out here. Okay. So, Lisa Navarro says, any kids you have that one day take over Shortwave? I don't have kids, so, but I have my nephew Gabriel that has kind of, you know, I've dabbled in the shortwave radio a little bit. Casey Red Dragon, nice to have you here. Radioactive says, Joe, unfortunately the awards given here to US hams do not consider if they're across a continent from each other as a DX contact, but you're correct given the distances you are talking about. You know, that's why DXing is a very, varies, you know, depending on what we think of what DX is. Pretty, very simple. Well, Liviu Gabrienu says, how many miles, kilometers away do we consider DX? That I'll have the same answer as David in Barcelona, which is it depends on the frequency you're listening to. A 100 kilometer away FM station for me is DX. A 100 kilometer away, say CHU Canada time signal on 3330 is not DX personally, because it's close for that frequency. Sheldon says, we have to remember as well that radio stations aren't broadcasting for DXers, they're broadcasting for listeners. So that is true. Actually, 99% of all the radio stations on shortwave are there with programs for people to listen to. They, you know, we can easily forget when asking for a QSL card, for example, that basically when we send that precious, you know, for example, sending that reception report to, you know, I remember listening to, there were so many African stations in the 80s and listening to them very weak in my radio and being able to do reception reports, sending in to get a QSL card. I'm totally excited by the fact that I've heard Namibia on shortwave. I don't think Namibia is as excited to know that Canada is hearing them. I might even be a little annoying because I'm asking for something and I'm not really listening to their program, and will be maybe not listening to their programs because the signal never makes it really well. So that station was broadcasting to their population and in some cases to part of Africa. They weren't really that impressed or interested in knowing that, you know, a little Canadian guy is receiving them in Montreal, and that, not only that, but he's actually asking for a QSL card in return. And we got to remember that stations are not there for that. They're not DX targets. They're not DX targets, for sure. I just says no, DX is a cat. You know what? I want to put some kind of a GPS thing on the cat, because he goes around a lot when he goes outside. And sometimes I'm very curious. I'd like to know where he goes. And I'd like to map that on the computer screen or something. Woman out there says, as a child growing up in Montreal, DXing was sneaking my portable AM radio into bed and listening to KDKA at night. You know, once again, DXing is, you know, when I was young, you know, today I'm kind of used to it, but when I was young, I would consider tuning around the medium wave band. I remember one thing that I would love to do, and it's that I would bring my shortwave radio, not my shortwave radio, sorry, a portable AM radio, and tune into a New York station that would play big band era music that my mom would really love to listen to. And it was kind of a bonding moment between me and my mom. You know, it's like I was about 13, and I would bring out that AM radio, and you know, she didn't know anything about radio, long distance listening to stations from, you know, I was the one that had fiddled with the radio and said, oh, you can hear New York, and you can hear Boston, or you can hear, you know, Philadelphia, and it's like, wow, this is so cool. And when I had found that big band era music station from New York, you know, I sometimes I'd go out in a hot summer night, would go out on the balcony outside, sitting and talking, and I'd have that the AM radio on that New York station with the big band music that my mom would love, and you know, it was kind of cool. You know, she would love the music. I'd find it just cool that I was listening to New York from Montreal on a little AM portable radio. And you know what? That's DXing technically. I mean, I'm receiving an AM station from New York, even though some people will say it's not DXing. New York is easy to catch in Montreal on the AM band. So it all depends on many factors. What, you know, when it's new to you and it's like, well, this is so cool, I'm getting New York, which is, you know, several hundred kilometers away from Montreal. It's very interesting. I think we change our mind about DXing as we get better at the hobby. We maybe put the range of what we consider DX at another level. You know, now today, New York on 1130 or, you know, 880, or it's of course it's an easy target. It's something you hear every night. So for me, it would not be technically DXing because it's an easy target. I would consider now a DXing as something weaker on some odd frequency and farther away maybe, or you know, it's just I think as DXers ourselves, we kind of put the bar higher at some point, simply for ourselves. But you know what? I don't think that bar needs to be the same bar for everyone. You know, like I just said, somebody discovering the radio hobby and getting a station that he's never heard before, for him that's DXing, whether it's 50 miles away or 10,000 miles away. I think we all have our level of what DXing is. Good weekend, Joe Stokesbury. It's nice to have you on board. Hal Hutchison, nice to have you here. Thoughts on the 8600 yet? Any negative reviews? I've read 3 or 4 reviews. I've seen a couple of dozen videos, and I've seen one in action at the CIDX barbecue. And I gotta say that I'm totally impressed with the 8600. I think it's a great radio. Everybody that has one has said that they are extremely happy to own the 8600, and not really seen any negative on the 8600. Not much. You know, it's like every radio, it's not 100% perfect, but pretty much everything I've seen seems to be great. The last review I've read, or the last that I've read of the 8600 was a review in the Spectrum Monitor, and I mean, if I'd have had the money, that Spectrum Monitor article, it was like, okay, I want to have an 8600 now. So, but it's not perfect. There are some flaws, but as a performance, as the radio is, it's just an amazing piece of equipment. Totally. Two ends in the radio. I have a question. I have an Electro AC100 portable from China. It has the frequencies 2.3 to 5 megahertz, labeled as MB. Any idea what MB means? 2.3 to 5 megahertz. I don't know. Maybe they kind of put it as medium band or something because of the fact that it's in the lower part of shortwave and above. I don't know. I've never seen MB on that. You know, technically, that radio is to receive what is much more like tropical and local band shortwave broadcast, because I mean, there's the 120 meter band, which is around 2.3, and there's the 60 meter band also, which is at 4.7, 4.8, 4.9 megahertz. So I would guess they probably labeled, I don't know, or MB for meter band, but these are not meter band, but frequency. But maybe they're putting MB for meter band, although these are labeled in megahertz and not in meter band measures. Take care, Sheldon. Nice to have you on board. And if you guys want to have a copy of the CIDX Club Bulletin, you can have a free sample copy, and maybe you can become a member. CIDXclub@yahoo.com, CIDXclub@yahoo.com, and just ask for a free sample. It's a PDF publication. We'll send you, Sheldon will send you one gladly. And if you like it, $10 a year for subscription, and you'll have 12 editions of a wonderful little publication that talks about everything from shortwave to medium wave to VHF, UHF, amateur radio, point of views on different aspects of radio, QSL cards, and so on. Lots of nice information in there. It's not just for Canadians only, it's for everybody. It's an amazing little thing, and you'll be part of a club, a radio club. So CIDXclub@yahoo.com. Oh, that is, yeah, that could be possible, but you know what? It's not technically a marine band thing. What's happening there? So it's just a little crazy. I'm wondering what that is. It could be marine band, but I'm not sure it's I'm not sure that's what it means in that case. Marine band, it's not impossible, but because most of these are in single sideband and all of that, I don't know. I'd consider that somebody's, you know what, I would, my take on it, I think they just wanted to put like some kind of medium band to say that it's but you know, it's not shortwave, but it's in the medium wave band. One thing you got to remember, that 2.3 megahertz, by the way, is not shortwave. It's still in the medium wave band. Medium wave is up to 3 megahertz. So when you guys on the ham radio bands are broadcasting on the 160 meter band, 1.8 megahertz, you're actually not in shortwave anymore. You are on the medium wave bands. I think they extended what medium wave band meant and they put it and labeled it from 2.3 to 5 megahertz. Simply. That's what I think. My take on it. That's my take on it. Let's check it out. 9830, we have Voice of Turkey. Not super strong compared to the usual signals that I get, but 9830 radio, it's the Voice of Turkey in English. That broadcast is for Europe and North America, 9830. Fabrice Simonet says, DXing looked like magic to me when I was living in Asia, to be able to receive Radio France with my tiny $80 radio and hear my native language. You know, it is DXing. It's truly DXing. It would be like anybody that would have, you know, heard Radio Canada International. I was talking at the CIDX barbecue to someone that you know, travels the world, and she was telling me how cool it is to receive Radio Canada International everywhere in the world where she worked. It was kind of nice. Casey Red Dragon, any SSTV today? Let's do a little bit of digital stuff. 14230, let's check out for Slow Scan TV. I'm just going to synchronize the clock. Make sure that there we go, synchronize to the closest. Okay. Capable Guardian says, call it DX when you want to impress normies. You know, it's just cool to listen. I mean, you know, once again, remember that. Say that you're listening to WRMI in Florida on your radio, and you show that to somebody that's never dabbled on shortwave, doesn't know what it is, and you say DX is listening to long distance stations far away. And you might say, well, that's not DX for me. But if you ask that person that is a newbie that has never heard a station from Florida into your area, well, his view or her view will be, well, that's DX. It's far away. Wow, you're getting a station from Florida. You know, I think it evolves. I think our own view of what DX is evolves with our experience. Radioactive says, I personally will always consider Radio New Zealand as DX, even though I can receive them 99% of the time. I pretty much consider Radio New Zealand DX also, and here it's much more difficult. So yeah, like I said, Mad Radio DX or MB could be meter band, even though it's megahertz, and it could mean medium wave band also. You know, we don't really know. They just put MB there. Fabrice says, can you enlighten us about what is the major step up when you switch from a, let's say, PL680 to an ICOM like yours, except for the big price tag step up? The main issue, the main difference of going from a Texan PL680 or a portable receiver of any kind to an ICOM like I have is there's several things that you got to think. First of all, you got to think about the fact that the tuning capabilities are much more precise. So for example, on a Texan PL680, you'll hear something in single sideband on 14246. Thing is, you could be on 14245, you could be on 14247. The BFO, when you tune around, gives you a pretty wide range. So you know that you're somewhere there. On an ICOM like I have, you know that you're on 14246.5 upper sideband. So there's the precision of frequency, the precision of what you're listening to, the separate upper lower sideband modes, which makes it better. Now, okay, Texan PL680 has that separate upper lower sideband, which makes it a little more advanced than a lot of portables. But the performance of that is better on a more advanced receiver. You will also be able to set up, you know, my ICOM, you can put a 1000 feet antenna and it will never overload. You put a, you know, 100 feet wire in the Texan PL680, if there's a lot of signals in an evening that are strong, that radio overloads. That radio will have difficulty getting some of the stations that I hear on the ICOM because of that. It will desensitize. It will be less sensitive because the overload will simply make the signals, the circuit, kind of lower its sensitivity to try to cope with the fact that the signal is so strong. So there's a lot of things like that that make it better. The stability of frequency, although the Texan receivers like the PL680 are very, very stable. And you know, in some conditions, in difficult conditions, you know, sensitivity is a little better, you got to say. Now, I have to admit, a Texan radio or a you know, a Sony 7600, the sensitivity is quite amazing. Today's receivers have attained a very high level of sensitivity when you think about it. But an ICOM ICR 8500, a Kenwood R5000, a ICOM 8600, will have more, a little more sensitivity, and because of that factor of not overloading, very weak signals will often be audible on the ICOM and not on the portable. And to give you an idea, I had a last summer, not this summer, the other one before, I had a shortwave listening evening with a few people. And we used only portable radios and different ways of listening. And every signal that we'd receive on the portables, we'd compare with the ICOM ICR 8500. And it was obvious that in any given time when a signal was a little weak, the ICOM had a better job, and it had an easier time in bringing that signal to a listening level that you can understand easily than any portables. And we tried several portables. I mean, the Grenic G5, the Texan PL680, and that's where you see there's an edge. There's something that these radios actually perform better. And when you try, they perform better. Say that you've got signals that are on the edge of, you know, the propagation brings it up and down, and they're on the edge of what your receiver can do. The ICOM, in the same conditions, will bring it clearer, will make it easier to understand, and the general listening will just be better in general. It's very interesting. It's very interesting because you tune around and you see there's a difference. And you know, I would, if I had the choice to have only one receiver, if something would happen and I only can keep one, of course, the number one choice and the one that I will never depart from, I will want to have the ICOM ICR 8500. You know, I'll even take the 8500 over an SDR for the capability of also the VHF UHF that it gives me. But you know, it is, you know, another thing. Look, the ephedry I've got here is an amazing radio for the price tag that it has, which is around $200. But honestly, in any given time of radio listening, the ICOM on shortwave has an edge. I love this because it's a good radio, and it has this, which makes me very, very good, because now I see there's somebody talking there. I can just click on it, and the ease of use of this is really amazing. It has that edge. This has a different edge, a different positive side to it. But that same signal that's coming in pretty well here, you know what? In several moments that I've tested different radios, and that's something that I need to do. Actually, maybe do a compare of the SDR versus the SDR versus the ICOM. You'll see that even though here it's fantastic, the ICOM will, in many of these signals, show you that it's got a little edge. It's got a little something that it is better at the performance that it gives with the same signal. There's a reason for a price tag. I mean, these radios are expensive. They have really high price tags. But the electronics inside it are not in the same league. The electronics inside these radios are very high efficiency electronics. They do what they do better. Basically, that's exactly what I want to do, Al Hutchison. You know what? I haven't done that. I've never done that, and I gotta say, I have to do videos. I think that's going to be a very interesting one. Check for these videos coming in the next week. I want to do that. I just realized how I have not done that, and I need to do it. Show the difference between getting something here, getting something on the ICOM. Viewing the difference in the quality of reception and so on. It's not visible necessarily on every signal, but I think you guys will see one is better at doing something than the other. What makes this, the ephedry at $200 is an amazing performer, okay? And I'm actually very surprised at the performance of that radio. But two flaws that is interesting. One is these lines. I've noticed that when the ephedry isn't working, there's less of these. There's less audible interference. So the ephedry itself, I think, creates a little bit of noise. Also, the fact that it is an electronic device that's running with the router with all the electronics of computer technology increases the noise a little bit in here across the surface. And it's very, very flexible here what you can do with this, and the waterfall is amazing, and it compensates. All that compensates a lot, but in sheer listening, sheer DXing of weak signals, the ICOM has a little something that adds to it. What might be difficult to compare, if I compare the ICOM with this, is the audio, because it's a little unfair to use different audio types. You know, this is audio that comes from Logitech speakers. The ICOM has that outboard speaker that I use that's pretty good. But it's crazy. It's crazy. Jean Paradis says, you said it, I love mine, and it's because of you, thanks. But the 8500 is an amazing radio. I'll never change it for anything in the world. I would not even exchange it for an 8600. I'd rather keep it and have an 8600 with it, basically. Radioactive says a radio like the ICOM also has separate modes like CW, RTTY as well, not just AF, AM, FM, USB, LSB, better filtering. So yeah, of course, a lot of flexibility in its filtering and the way that you can play with the different modes that it has and everything. And they do have an edge. They do have an edge compared to portables. I mean, anybody that is a big fan of the hobby, a radio hobby, and that has the money, because that's the biggest issue with these radios is getting the cash to buy one of those. I mean, at some point you realize, well, these radios outperform any portable. With this it might be a little more difficult to find a difference, but I could do a lot of videos of checking out any portable that I have and checking the signal on the ICOM, and you'll see the ICOM copes and is so much better at just listening to that same signal. Big Stack 171 says, just heard TI2 CDA in Costa Rica, 21285 in Ottawa. Wow. 21285. Let's check it out. Is he still there? .21 15 meter band has been really dead. Really dead lately. And by the way, guys, if you enjoy what I do, don't forget, we take donations. Helps me out in continuing what I do, what I love doing, and what you guys love also, in these great moments. So it's very helpful. I would not have been able to continue doing this if it was not possible to have donations, because I mean, the monetization on YouTube has been very low recently. So I want to thank everybody that have donated. It's something that's extremely cool, and helped me continue in what I do. And I want to thank everybody that donates to these shows. It's much appreciated. And if you never donated and love what I do, why not think about it? It's kind of cool, Not always to the same people to give a little something. And thank you for your donations. Okay, I do hear a very weak something. Very weak something, but that could be that. That could be that. Hey, Cap Skywave Schedules, nice to have you here. Playing catch up tonight. We'll watch you later. Cool. Nice to have you on board. Let's check out the digital signals. So 14074, I believe, is for FT8, and that's yeah, there's some signals there. You can hear it really well. So let's take the WSJT software and go into FT8 mode. So right now I am in FT8, I believe. So let's check it out. Let's see what we can receive with this. Look at that, all these signals here. 14074 in FT8 mode. There's a CQ from a KS4OT, NA2. These are US stations. Let's check it out a little bit. Do we have any other things than, yeah, CO6RD is a Cuban station. CO3JR is another Cuban. The other ones are all US stations. Look at all these contacts, amazing. CQ from K5CM, CQ from KS4OT, CU2AP, another Cuban. No Europeans in there, North Americans. Pretty amazing when you think. Look at that. Look at the amount of stations that show up in here. It's kind of cool. These modes are amazing. These modes are just amazing when you think about it. Really amazing. So FT8 is one of the newest digital modes. For those that wonder what that is, so you can get the software. It's WSJTX. FT8 is a mode that is still in beta form, so you have to get the experimental version of WSJTX, not the regular version. I'm using version 1.8.0 RC1, which means Release Candidate 1. And FT8 is a mode that you like or you hate, and that's the funny part of it. I've often had people saying, well, you know, these modes are boring. I don't understand why people use them. You know what? These modes are made for people that just want to have contacts and that don't want the gazillion let's talk for an hour before we know, you know, whatever. And you know, these are interesting modes also because they are what we call weak signal modes. Weak signal modes is amazing. I mean, here you might hear nothing within the noise and you still get stations that will show up here. This is pretty amazing. Look at that. One of the things I just saw was a VE4 station. Just go down. So there's a VE4 which is in Saskatchewan. And I mean, there's a lot of stuff in here. CO2YQ is a Cuban one. AG7R, United States. CX4RX, which is, I believe, another Cuban. Oh, it seems that K0DEQ is having an EA6 contact, so he's having a contact with a Spanish station. VE4AMU is having a contact with Cuba, so this is amazing. I mean, this is contacts going on. And the thing to understand in here in the FT8 mode is what are you listening to, and that is often what I get as a question. Okay, I look at this, what does it mean? So, okay, you've got the time UTC, that is the time of the contact. You've got dB, which is kind of the strength of the signal. There's the frequency shift, because they're not all on exactly the same frequency, they're a little shifted. So this is the shift that you get in the frequency. Then you get the message. What's the message? Message is to, usually, okay, you have the green line, CQ, that's a station calling, okay? And that station means I want to have other stations contact me. Then you have CX4RX, which is the station. Then you have G525. This is what we call the grid square. This grid square gives an overall idea of where he's located in the world. Now, say that I want to know CO6RD. Where is he, and what's the information about that guy? So the CQ ones, you can say, okay, CO6RD, what I'll do is I'll fire up the browser, and here we'll type QRZ.com. And QRZ.com is the website that I usually go to, and I will enter CO6RD, which is a call sign. If I press enter, I've got the information. It's Rinaldo H. Rodriguez. He's got a picture on this page. It gives you the full info of where he is. Sancti Spiritus in Cuba. And of course, there's that guy, his setup. So he's not the average Cuban, I can tell you that. And you've got sometimes more information about who they are, and sometimes more pictures and everything, which is cool. One of the things you can do is click detail. One of the things that I like in detail is that you can bring up the map. So here I'll click show map, and I'll click full screen, for example. So okay, it tells that the station is right here, that little cross, and you guys can't see it really well. I'm sorry about that. Well, I'll actually move away on the map and have the map show me the world instead. So there's a contact here. I'm located right here or there, which is pretty amazing. So I know you guys don't see it really well, but it's cool stuff. You know, it's cool information to get. So QRZ.com is a web page that is very, very useful in order to get all the information you need. So when you see two call signs, the last one is always the one you're listening to. Why? Because it's just amateur operator way of doing things. When you actually end a contact, you'll always give your call sign last. So if in this case here, KC7W KS4OT was the station talking to KC7W. So use the last call sign when there's two call signs. And finally, there's a little bit of information. So there are grid squares. 73, just means thank you for the contact, bye-bye, and so on. And all sorts of little things like that. These are kind of cool modes, especially from DXing. When you're DXing, FT8 or these digital modes like these are just amazing at how you can receive very weak stations. Also, these are modes that are very low power. In general, people are not using a lot of power in these modes. Radioactive says, Joe, the N7 MDW station is a mile away from me and is running a lot of power. Yeah, even in FT8, usually in these modes like FT8, JT76, PSK31, most of the time they're running much lower power in general. So it's kind of interesting. So I'm hearing a station very close to you, Radioactive. It's kind of cool. David says, I bought my ICR 8500 because I was a bit pissed off that after having to use the laptop for study-related activities, if I wanted to relax a bit using my RTL SDR, I couldn't put it aside. Yeah, but I'm sure you're really happy. I'm sure you're really happy. So, pretty nice. Oh, really? Refuses to run less than 50 watts? Some people are so stubborn in the amateur stuff. I have more respect for a guy that runs, low power and is able to DX the world than somebody that has 2 kilowatts in the antenna to go around the world. There's things like that sometimes. They're just crazy. Woolman Outdoors says, I often use digital modes and never really use more than 15 watts. The signal gets out much like CW. Digital modes have that cool thing, is that low power will get you around the world. It's not like voice. Voice is more tricky because it's more difficult. And these modes are amazing. I mean, if you look at the filtering the computer can do, receiving these stations, even when the noise is just crazy. Daniel 05 receiving some weak signals on CB, 11 meter. Let me just try it, just out of curiosity. Let's go to 27025. Anything there? Anything there? That is probably noise here. Yeah. Nothing much right now. The 10 meter, the 11 meter band, the CB band, basically. So, Radioactive says, on digital modes, I never run more than 25 watts. If I can get there with 25 watts, I don't need to work it. One of the amazing things also that I think a lot of amateur radio operators don't understand is that running 25 watts or 100 watts is not making your signal 4 times stronger at the other end. It barely shows on an S meter. Some people have this crazy idea that, oh, I'll run 500 watts, I'll be really powerful. And in reality, you're stronger than the guy with 100 watt, yeah, but you're not 5 times stronger. You're a few S units maybe, not a lot. And that's one thing that's kind of crazy about it, is some people really overrate the amount of power used. Some people think that, well, you know, with 1 kilowatt, I'll go everywhere, and they don't understand that. Well, it's not that much of a difference from another one running 100 watts. David says, yep, Joe, I just love the ICR 8500. Not only it has enormous frequency coverage, but its performance is great no matter what frequency you're tuned on. Absolutely. An amazing radio, absolutely. I totally agree with that. Amazing receiver, the ICOM ICR 8500. Fabrice Simonis says, remember having a CB in my bedroom back in 1996 before the internet. Felt like I was connected to the whole planet. Oh man, I was 16. I remember, you know, I had my first real CB, which is the 40 channel one that I've got here. I mean, I was 14 years old, 15 years old. That was so crazy cool. I mean, I was amazed and had so much fun with that CB. It was just so cool of a device. Oh man, let's see what we can tune. Let's tune a little bit of the shortwave frequencies and see what we can hear. What can we hear? Revolutionary Brewers. They're a reasonably cheap way to get involved with ham radio, like in the $200 range. It depends what you mean by ham radio. If you mean with the HF bands, you can probably find, you know, for $200-300, probably maybe a used rig that would work well. You know, 200 is not a lot of money, but you know, at the AmFest, places like that, you might find something that could actually put you in the hobby. If you're thinking of more like just the 2-meter bands, like on VHF, there are some Baofeng, you know, transceivers that are even less than $200 that will let you go into the VHF, UHF ranges of amateur radio, and these will be less than 200, and they are quite amazing from what I hear. If you get more into the, you know, aspect of shortwave and HF and talking to the world, for 200 it's going to be a little more difficult, but you know, you might find something used, an older ham radio gear from somebody at a ham fest and things like that. Who knows? Wolman Onder says, during a band opening, CB used to work to sound in US from Canada. Absolutely. So many times. I heard this year. I've heard so many openings. So many openings. Daniel 5 says, I find it funny how people have huge amps but use it incorrectly and use it for dumb reasons, like to talk over people. Yeah, absolutely. That's the main idea. I mean, come on. You're trying to contact a DX target. Honestly. The main reason for some people to use a kilowatt is to just try to beat everybody at their game and try to be there. Hey, Radioactive. Nice to have you on board as usual. Take care. Says that a TS50S used for around 200. So that could be a possibility. That could be a possibility. Holman Adler says a low power QR PCW rig will, with a homemade dipole, get you on for less than 200. So he's got such a station for portable use. So that's pretty cool. Danny No 5 says Baofeng is a really good cheap radio company. 510 watts VHF UHF can be programmed out of band and very cheap. So, you know, pretty cool. Bobby Clan says, I'm going to get into satellite ham operations, talk to the birds. That is cool. That is actually very cool. You know, I mean, it's such a fun hobby. It's such fun things. David says, weak signal digital modes like FT8 and JT65 are also very adequate to DX with compromise or low performance antennas. which may not be very good to pick up weak signals in other modes, such as SSB. Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's tune a little bit before we leave. I'm gonna start at like let's say 12,000. Oops, not there. 12,000. Any signals of interest here? 12050 is WWN.
A preparar los alimentos para tu familia, en la ropa que vas a lavar, en la limpieza que vas a realizar, en cuidar de tu hogar, no solamente en los pequeños detalles, cómo tú adornas, cómo tú cuidas tu casa, cómo...
Radio Marti on 11930 with some Cuban jamming over it.
Aprobada en el Parlamento bicameral e impulsada por el gobierno del presidente haitiano Jovenel Moïse. La protesta...
Radio Havana, Cuba on 11880.
La sesión de correspondencia de rádio Havana, Cuba convocam todos os ouvintes ao concurso correspondente às suas transmissões neste 2017.
Sounds in Portuguese.
Qual é a sua opinião do desenho dos selos de Cuba?
$11,790. Sounds like interesting. 11790. What is that station? So 11790. This is Radio Feda in Arabic from Madagascar. Radio Feda, Madagascar World Voice in Arabic from the from Madagascar. Cuba in Spanish on 11760. Thanks, Wildman Outdoors. Nice to have you on board, and hope to see you next time. Next radio show, by the way, is next Friday. So next Friday, 2000 hours UTC, we'll be here live once again. And of course, we have a Saturday show also next Saturday, not tomorrow, but the other Saturday. And believe it or not, we're already going to be in October, which is crazy. I just can't believe how time flies. 11580 WRMI with a good signal.
Di 18 imprese che fanno biotecnologia, che fanno e hanno fermato l'accordo settoriale per il periodo 2017-2020.
Let's check out what other signals you can see here. Interesting to see these lines of signal here. WWV very weak on 10,000. 99. WRMI 99.55. $98.70, I believe, is Saudi Arabia. Check out the different signals here. Radio Marti from the United States on 9565. Take care, Gene Faraday. Always nice to have you on board. Brothers there. Yeah, sure. Hello there. It's interesting how propagation is changing with the fall coming. 9420 Grace is not very strong now anymore compared to what it was. Any more chances to do a Perry Island expedition before temperatures drop? Enjoy the videos in which you showed the area. Cross your fingers on Wednesday. This coming Wednesday. It's supposed to be 23 Celsius, which is within an acceptable range of temperature. So there's a good chance that this coming Wednesday I'll go to Perry Island for what could be the last D expedition. It's you know, it's sad this year. I went only once until now. I usually go there 4 or 5 times during a summer, if not more. So there's a big possibility of doing it on this coming Wednesday, and which will be October 3rd or something like that. 4th, October 4th. So I think it's going to be fun, and we're going to take a look at and you know, it's at this time of year, it's kind of interesting propagation conditions. It's going to be nice to see what we can hear, and hopefully conditions will be good. So yeah, pretty good chance. No, they don't close the island, Bobby. It's just that at some point it gets so cold that it's not fun anymore. You know, when it gets below, you know, below 15, let's say below 15 degrees, it starts to get a little cold. And what happens is that island being, you know, near the water is always windy. So even when it's, you know, even at 20-23 degrees, you feel cold because it's always windy. And of course the sun is very low at this, you know, this time of year. The sun is starting to get really low here, so the trees block the sun pretty much, and it is cool. So you know, I've been there when it was maybe 5 or 10 degrees Celsius just before winter set in, and at some point it's just not fun. So yeah, well, the problem with that, Fabrice, is that if the cops find that I have alcohol, I'll get a $160 ticket, and it's not cool. There's no alcohol allowed outdoors here. So I sometimes wish it'd be fun, you know. Of course, I could disguise it, you know, like put in some kind of juice or something, but anyways. Radio keep me warm, that's for sure. And I'll try to DX a little bit, maybe do some try to do some another you know, comparing two receivers. I kind of like that, comparing two receivers, seeing how they perform, you know. So yep, public drinking is forbidden in Montreal. And over there, the cops probably go on the island at least 4 or 5 times a day, if not more. It's crazy. So hey guys, we're almost at the 3-hour mark. I'm gonna say goodbye. I hope you enjoyed the show today. I'm going to take it easy, do some little shortwave listening, and basically, you know, it's kind of fun. Oh, that is a good idea, Mad Radio DXer. Black ale in a Coca-Cola bottle. That would probably fool them, absolutely. Absolutely. Don't give me too many ideas here. Oh, Jerry, you think my cousins? Okay, let's try 5270 here. Yeah, they are.
Ça veut dire que normalement, il devrait en avoir encore pour 5 à 6 jours avant que ça ait la nouvelle.
The guy's talking about the moon, and from what he just said, has no idea about the moon, I can tell you that. Well, they won't not sniff the bottle, Patrick, Manny. Nice to have you here, by the way. They actually don't. They're not allowed to do things like that. They're not allowed to, you know, ask me. I want to sniff the bottle. You know. They, you know, it's like if I bring some orange juice. You know, it could be possible to put some vodka in it and have a little drink there. They're not gonna ask me to open my orange juice. They don't do things like that. They look for the visible thing. You know, if you have a six-pack or if you have wine or alcohol. You know, it's so sad because last year, not this year, but last year when I went there, there was a nice little family barbecue going on the you know, one part of the island, and it was you know, the man and the woman with their children and everything, the little barbecue going on, and they had set up a nice picnic table, and they had a bottle of wine, and they actually got a $160 fine. They had to empty their bottle of wine in the grass, and I remember watching the scene and thinking, wow, it's so sad, because they're not, you know, they're not troublemakers, they're not doing anything bad, but it's the rule. It's just the rule, you know. No, the thing is, Mad Radio DXer, is that they just, it has to be a closed bottle that was unopened. So, oh no, you know, Jerry, it was not that bitch cup. She would have been even worse with them, I would guess. It was a regular cop that time, and you know, it was sad. It was. I was watching the scene. It was so sad. I was like, "Oh, this is so sad." They're just enjoying a nice summer day, and there's nothing bad in what they're doing. You know. I thought it was. You know, I understand the law is the law, but I thought it was too much. You know, there's a difference from a drunk guy drinking in a park and a nice little family picnic with a bottle of wine. I don't know, but unfortunately that's the way it is. And it's sad because, you know, it wasn't like this all the time. When I was 15, 16, you could actually go in the park. I remember having a party in the park. We were like 10 guys, and we were in the park, in the middle of a public park, next to some trees, and basically the cops would pass by, see us with our beers, and all they would say is, just take it easy, don't do any problems, and they'd leave us alone. But you know, at some point they made these laws where, okay, we can't you know, drink alcohol in a park anymore, and we can't, you know, anything like that. But well, if, for example, if I'd be there and I'd have a bottle of vodka, and that I can show them that it was unopened, never opened, it's still sealed, they will not take it away from me, they will not fine me. I can have a bottle of vodka, unopened and sealed bottle of vodka with me if I want. But if it had been opened, they fall into the area of, okay, an open bottle of vodka in a public place, you're probably drinking alcohol. So now they fine you, and they ask you to empty the bottle. I've seen this many times with drunks that are downtown Montreal. The cops come over and they ask them to just empty the bottle in the street. So yeah, you can have a bottle of alcohol with you, but it has to be sealed and unopened, basically. And it's like in the cars. Well, you know, that's the sad thing, Jerry. It wasn't like that 20 years ago. It became, you know, Montreal became suddenly a very policed city. in the past 10 years. And we've seen it because in the past 10 years we've had a major event where students actually went to the street and started, you know, doing protests against the hike of student fees in universities. And it's just crazy. It's just crazy. I mean, it didn't go very well, and they would arrest students by hundreds. There's a law that prevents you from being in a troopment of people that looks like they're gonna do something bad, and it's only on the looks of things. So they would actually close down a wide area, and everybody in there would be accused of being in a protest, and they would actually fine them like $600-700, and it was totally crazy. And that's where we saw that, okay, there's something wrong. There's a police state coming to Montreal, which is very, very unhealthy and very, very bad. And I think there is where it's a problem. Hello there, Eaton Best. Yes, you are 3 hours late. We're about to close soon. Sorry about that. There's this. I think there's a lot of problem with thinking that by making Montreal a police city, that for some reason they're going to prevent any terrorist acts or whatever. And it has, in my advice, it has nothing to do with it. It's just crazy. They're not doing it the right way, and it's just driving people crazy. I can buy booze in the United States, but when I bring it back to Canada, I'll have like 30 or 40% taxes to pay on it. It's a very, very, very complicated thing. And technically, you usually don't do that because it's just too complicated. And you have to stop at the border and say, oh, I have a bottle of whiskey from the United States, because if they find it in your car and you did not signal it, they can actually arrest you for not saying that you're bringing back a bottle of booze from the United States. It's very, very complex. So David in Barcelona says, here in Spain, lots of people drinking outdoors, no regulations on this. They're not effectively enforced. That's a problem here because it's common for young people to meet in public places and drink the whole night. Neighbors are driving crazy with all the noise they make. Yeah, you know, there has to be an halfway. I mean, there has to be some rules, but I think here that's just going way, way too crazy. I can tell you that. And you know, it makes me sad because it makes me a little mad at how things are handled here, and you know, seeing how things have happened and how what have happened in the past 10 years, just crazy. Oh, absolutely. Booze in the United States is nothing compared to here in the price. Here, alcohol is taxed at a rate that is so high. To give you guys an example, a friend of mine went to Paris for a week, and he was telling me that a bottle of wine, same bottle of wine, that in Paris he paid €5, 8 Canadian dollar. Okay? And here in Canada, in Montreal, that bottle of booze costs about 30 Canadian dollars. But in reality over there, it's 8 Canadian dollars. The 30 Canadian dollar, okay, that $22 difference is all in taxes. Oh man. Daniel 05 says, speaking of bringing in booze from US to Canada, reminds me of those chocolate eggs with a toy in it. It's legal in the US. Kids could choke on the toy and the egg. Yeah, well, Kinder eggs are illegal, man. I mean, we've got like tons of these here. I don't remember hearing ever that a child choked on the Kinder toy in it. I don't know. Yeah, it's totally crazy here. The taxes are very, very high on alcohol here. Give you an idea. Going to Cuba, you'll get that Cuban rum. In Cuba, the Cuban rum is like, you know, doesn't cost anything. It costs such a small amount. The same bottle of Cuban rum here, same bottle, it's gonna be like $40. In Cuba, it's like $5. It's crazy. Here it's $40, and it's not because the transportation or anything. It's really because the taxes are extremely high on alcohol here. The alcohol is sold only by government-approved places. Most of what we buy, like hard liquor, rum, vodka, stuff like that, we have to buy in government liquor stores. It's the only place you can get those. And there's actually weird laws that, for example, when I was talking about that Shortwave beer in British Columbia, it's actually illegal to bring in beer or alcohol from another province into Quebec. It's just stupid. The beers that we drink are probably what is the least taxed of all. To give you an idea, if we look at a regular case of beer, okay, a standard beer like Budweiser, okay, that we have here. So a case of 24 Budweisers will be roughly about 20 Canadian dollars here. How much is a case of 24 Budweisers in the US? It's about 20 Canadian dollars here. That is more of what is really taxed very high here is wine and hard liquor. That's what's taxed a lot. Beer has some taxes, but it's not as high. So here a case of 24 Budweisers is about $20 Canadian. So yeah, we're about to have that here. Pot will be legal in the next year or so, which I'm not sure is a good idea, but anyways, Andrew the X-ray says, here in the UK, Kinder eggs are still sold and we live in Orwellian state. Yeah, totally, I know. Jerry says we have supersized Kinder eggs, like $80 and $100. I get one at a time. Man. Okay, so but how much is a case of 24? Anybody has a price on a case of 24 Budweisers? What does it cost in the US for 24 Buds? A case of 24. Out of curiosity, anybody knows the price for that? I wonder how much in the US it costs. Pretty crazy. Here, Kinder eggs are sold in the supermarkets. 20-ish. Okay, thanks, Eaton Best. So, close to the price. The only rule that we have here with beer, by the way, is that there is a minimum price that you're not allowed to sell beer below that price. And that is one rule to prevent people from drinking too much. The second law, that's very weird here, is if you want to buy beer or wine and you're at home, say you're having a party, it happened here a few times. You have a party with your friends and basically you find out that you just you're gonna run out of beer, for example. Well, you have to go get your beer before 11 p.m. because after 11 p.m. you can't buy beer or wine or alcohol at all. It's totally impossible. The only places you can drink and have alcohol after 11 p.m. is if you're in a bar. In the bar, you'll be able. But at home, if you run out of beer at, say, 11:05 p.m., you're out of luck because you can't get beer anymore. They lock up the beer stuff, and you just can't. Yes, Rob H., this is really live. Absolutely. So, you know, pretty crazy. That's crazy. Yeah, the official beer Kinder Egg channel. We're going to run that. Beer and Kinder Egg. Ew, I'm not sure I want to have the mix of beer and Kinder Egg, though. I actually find a Kinder Egg kind of, you know... Canadian can trade a Kinder Egg to an American for cheaper beer in exchange. Oh god, this is crazy. Bars in Montreal are allowed to be open up to 3 a.m. 3 a.m. is the time they close. And after that you can go to a an after hour, but they are not allowed to sell alcohol. So technically a bar could say, I will stay open till 24 hours, but after 3 a.m. they cannot sell alcohol to anyone. So anyways, take care everybody, and we ended this show with some Quebecois talking in the northern parts of Quebec. So 2 a.m. in Ontario. It was better because for a long time in Ontario it was like midnight. I remember going to Toronto and having last call at like 11:45 p.m. and thinking, what? Last call? What is that? So, you know. So thanks everybody for being here anyways. It was nice to have you on board. Thanks for being great fans and following me. Yeah, Bobby with that new call, WA5107SWL. That's pretty cool. Take care, everybody. Have a nice weekend. No show tomorrow. And we will be live once again, of course, Tuesday, Tech Show on the Windows channel. Thursday, Windows Insider Hour on the Windows Insider channel. And next Friday, 2000 hours UTC, we'll be live here talking about Shortwave. And on Saturday, we will also be live on Saturday at 2000 hours UTC. Take care, everybody. It's nice to have you on board. And stay safe. Love you all. Bye.